Others go over to America and ask for their Makulu pass, Trump, to punish us, but they stay here. Now they are told to go there and be refugees. They are refusing. They must go because we are a free country. We are a sovereign country. We are not a province of the United States. And that sovereignty will be defended.
But it's a genocide that's taking place that you people don't want to write about. But it's a terrible thing that's taking place. And farmers are being killed. They happen to be white. But whether they're white or black makes no difference to me. But white farmers are being brutally killed, and their land is being confiscated in South Africa. And the newspapers and the media, television media, doesn't even talk about it.
This video is for the white Afrikaners who are coming to the United States. I think you've already landed here. And I know that some of the folks who met you at the airport told you, welcome, we're so glad you're here. Most of us aren't glad you're here, okay? We don't want you here. We never wanted you here. And furthermore, I noticed they're gonna settle you in Idaho, Ohio, and North Carolina. I will tell you they're not our finest states, so they're a good fit for you. I understand that many of you are farmers, and I've seen a lot of people say, oh, that's great, we need more farmers. Sorry to say we don't. We actually need farm workers because we've deported most of them. So if you can, put your picking hat on and think about, picking produce, that's largely probably what you're going to be doing here because I hear you don't have a lot of skills. I would also say that you're not going to have to hold just one job, but probably 2 or 3 to make up for your quality of life that you had back in South Africa. There'll be no servants working for $2 a day. There's none of that here. So you're the servant who's working for $2 a day. So enjoy that. You're gonna have to pay for your health care, and ordinarily, because you're a refugee who's being discriminated against, you would go on Medicaid. But guess what? The Republicans just cut Medicaid. So I don't think you're going to have that option for healthcare. So maybe you'll do without. I don't know. And honestly, I don't care. I did notice that the Episcopalian Church had a program with the government where they would, excuse me, they would resettle and help, refugees resettle. They find you all to be so onerous, they terminated the partnership with the government. And they said, yeah, we won't be resettling those folks. Other things that you need to know about. While we are 58% white here in the United States, that's not going to last much longer. Within the next couple of years, we're going to be the minority, which will be fun for you because that's what you're used to. Interestingly enough, we have a ton of Latinos. We're the 2nd largest Spanish-speaking country in the world. So for you, if you could stop speaking that dirty, guttural, whatever it is, German, French, Dutch thing that you speak, that Afrikaans, nobody wants to hear that shit. So you can speak English or you can speak Spanish, which is really the 2nd language here. In terms of other things that you need to know about, the black people in this country, they don't get fucked with, okay? I know that there's a long legacy of colonialism and all kinds of stuff happening in your country, but our black folks have sort of been through the fire, if you will, and they're not gonna be fucked with. So you're the minority here. Enjoy. I really hope you like your time here. I'm gonna bet my ass that you're gonna be booking it back to SA probably within the next 12 months. Have a great day.
White South Africans can apply to the United States for temporary legal status for citizenship per order of Donald Trump. All others need not apply. So if you're black, brown, or Asian, or even the Afghanistan's legal status or temporary legal status, you wind up being deported without due process in some goddamn gulag or foreign jail. White South African farmers can come here immediately, and they are flying over in planes as we speak, getting citizenship or a path to citizenship. Donald Trump said there's no problem. It's not about black or white. Anybody that's in opposed or wrongfully harmed should have the right to seek refuge. Is that right, Donald? Like black people, brown people, yellow people, Afghanistans? Because I don't see anybody getting any help from this government except people that are not of color. What's up with that?
The orange one and the awkward one have decided to bus a whole bunch of white South Africans into the United States while deporting black and brown people out of America. Apparently, being a white South African is just so hard with all that racism against the white people. And every time they try to go to other white countries like Australia and England, those countries are like, no. But America is like, oh my God, you're a white racist person who already has a history of hating black people. Here is your green card. These white South Africans are in for a surprise because, like I said, Americans don't actually want them here. And I'm not even talking about, the sensible Americans that think this is absolutely insane and discriminatory and inhumane. But I'm talking about even the Republicans, the red states, the MAGA. They don't actually want them here. They just need to bolster their population because according to them, the white population is, under the threat of extinction. So they're getting as many white refugees that they can, which I digress a little bit. Back in the 70s, when the birth rates of white people started falling and immigrants from Europe stopped coming to America with good reason. So now they've gone all the way out to South Africa to find white people that want to be here. The reason why I said white South Africans are not going to have fun in America is because in South Africa, white South Africans are the numeric minority, okay? South Africa has 63 million people. White people are only 4.4 million. That is 7.3%. Meanwhile, in America, the population is 336 million. The white population is 225 million. So these white South Africans are only used to competing with 4.4 million people. In America, they're going to be competing against 225 million, half of which don't even want them there, and the other half are only tolerating them. And in South Africa, where the minority white population owned 70% of the land, majority of the political power, and, international influence, they're not going to have that in America. They're refugees. They're starting from scratch. No land, no jobs. Yeah, they speak English, but it's a little different. And I know you're thinking, well, they're white people will accept them. No. Remember the Italians, the Irish? Yeah, it's not gonna go as well as they hope. They're not gonna have their maids, their farm workers. They will be the farm workers because remember, they're going into red states. They will be part of the poor white population. And if you know anything about the poor white population in America, is that America also doesn't like them. I mean, look at how Trump is using, or rather used them for votes, and now he's cutting off all their benefits. Egg prices are through the roof. So if you think, if you're a white South African and you think it's gonna be good here, no, it won't. You're gonna be very poor. Which is kind of what you wanted anyway. They've been saying in South Africa ever since the end of apartheid, how they're poor and they're not doing well. Well, now, guess what? You get to stand on business because you're really gonna be poor in America. I guess you forgot to Google capitalism and realize that capitalism needs poor white people in order to survive. So I'm pretty sure these rich ass capitalists are pretty thankful for all of the labor that you're bringing. As another content creator at Shenanigans and Info already pointed out that these white South Africans, some of them apparently already here, in places like Nebraska, which is a red state, also has a lot of farms. That land will not be yours. Unlike in South Africa where you were just able to take it from black people, these white people are not just gonna give you land. Even if you're white, they will look you in the face and tell you to pull yourselves up by the bootstraps. also in South Africa, a lot of, white South Africans, you were, even though apartheid is over, you were still able to segregate yourself into, Orania. But in America, because you're coming in as a poor white person, segregation is gonna be a little hard to do. Meaning, you will be living next door to Black people, Hispanic people, Asian people, trans people, and some of those groups will be doing way better than you. Anyway, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. If you want to know how these white South Africans were the Christopher Columbus of South Africa, tell me in the comments and I will make a video.
Shame on the United States. Shame. Shame on Donald Trump and his whole administration. So check this out, y'all. White South Africans granted refugee status by the Trump administration. Now let that sink in. Look at these people. These people are the descendants of the colonizers and the apartheid rulers in South Africa. So the government over there is using their constitution to help give land back to the native Africans. They're buying land from South Africans who own 70% of all the land. And you go, how did they do that? They stole it. Then you got Elon Musk and Donald Trump talking about there's a genocide happening. There's no genocide. The only genocides that are happening right now are in Gaza, the Congo, South Sudan. Those are really genocides, and those are really refugees. Then you got Trump, remember, talking about they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs, when he's referring to Haitians. That's not happening either, and it wasn't happening. They have real status to be here, to work. But these guys, these Afrikaners, these poor farmers, they just, for whatever reason, can't make money in South Africa. They haven't been on their job. You notice there ain't no millionaires and billionaires Afrikaners coming to the United States as refugees. It's the poors. They got money for wars but can't feed the poor. And I'm talking to you white Americans, especially the ones who are in the lower class or poor. This really affects you. These Afrikaners are about to come over here, get free housing, free medical, they're gonna get jobs, they're gonna get education, and meanwhile, a lot of you are gonna continue to live in rural areas, in your trailers, in your apartments, and you're gonna lose your jobs because of Doge. These guys are here to get all the resources.
Make this make sense. Trump wants to get rid of all the black and brown immigrants in this country, but yet he wants to import white refugees from South Africa. Make it make
white people with less than $100,000 and that own a red hat. Make sense of this for me. America first, but make sense of this for me. The front half of a centaur that's running this country, there's a good joke about Elon being in the back half with a puppet, is currently expediting refugees from South Africa to America with short and long-term housing while you're still poor. Before they helped you, like anybody with less than 100 grand is poor. You're still poor. I know there's different levels. You're still in the group that is not their friend circle. Probably never will be. Likely will never be. Does it hurt or bother you that this group that's putting America first is now putting South Africans first, who, by the way, got there from where? Not America. They're actually Dutch, French, and German colonists. Make this one make sense to me. I feel like you can't just say, like, they're refugees, they need our help, because if that was the case, is it different because they're white? Just say that then. Just say that. What's that song by YG and Nipsey Hussle?
So an interesting thing happened today. In the midst of a very, very hardcore immigration policy where Trump is sending deputized ICE agents roaming the streets, not with any badges, not with any identification, sometimes wearing masks, ripping people off the street. It's that hardcore that they're doing everything they can to rid this country of illegal immigrants. Also, people who are actually a protected status are still getting taken out of this country and deported, and their protection status has been revoked. So in the midst of this very hardcore immigration policy, something interesting happened today. 59 white South Africans were granted refugee status, and they landed today in Washington, D.C. According to the administration, they were being persecuted in South Africa, and they had to flee. And so in the midst of this very hardcore immigration push, they were welcomed with open arms. Now, why, oh why, would that be? And what were the South Africans fleeing from? What could it be? So they are undoing years and years and decades of racist policies in South Africa, apartheid. And the white South Africans who came over here had to flee because they didn't like the new anti-racist laws in South Africa. That's not fleeing the country because you are in physical danger. That's called, I like the old racist policies. So I'm interested to hear MAGA Nation on this topic. You guys have been so hardcore that not only are illegal immigrants not allowed in here, even people who are not criminals, who are getting swept up, people who have been protected in a protected class are being swept up. Well, they shouldn't be here. You know, when people who have been brought here when they were 4 years old and they're driving in the car and they make a wrong turn, they are sent and deported. A student who has a student visa puts an op-ed in the paper criticizing the government. They are threatened and almost deported. If it wasn't for the judges, there'd be so many other people already out of here who are not criminals. So this whole thing, we know that's not what this is about. Okay, so MAGA Nation, how do you justify bringing these refugees from South Africa in here? Like, what's your justification?
For anyone who has any problems with refugees, I do not want to hear you talk about the South African white refugees and be like, they're coming here legally, it's fine, because their own government even says that they are not vetted. While Donald Trump says that they are completely vetted, that's 100% untrue, according to the South African government. They also said that the people that claim that they are being genocided are actually pro-apartheid, and that's why they're moving to the United States. And they're saying straight up that it is a move for political advantage. The South African government also came out and said that it's really ironic that Trump is allowing the most economically privileged people from around the world to enter the United States while denying the most vulnerable people who are trying to immigrate to the United States. Like, let's be clear here. These people are becoming refugees to the United States specifically because they are upset that people are upset in South Africa, that they are pro-apartheid. And yet Donald Trump will not accept any refugees that are actually coming here for detrimental circumstances. Again, it's just racism.
When I first laid eyes on these South Africans coming over here, I said, wait a minute. I ain't never seen an obese South African before. I mean, I ain't never, anyway. I'm serious. What? When white America get through with these refugees, I hope somebody tell these people that America gonna turn them every which way but loose. These people going back home, y'all. They will not stay here long term. America is ghetto as fuck, and they don't care. Just looking out of the window. They get through with these people, this man gonna be skin and bones, bones and skin.
Well, aren't these just the healthiest looking refugees I've ever seen? The most nourished, the most well-kept, the cleanest, most well-dressed refugees I've ever seen. I've never seen such stunningly healthy, good-looking refugees in my life. Thank God America offered them refuge from South Africa. Thank God. They looked like they could not have even stood another day there. Thank God.
Those 49 racists, Afrikaners, and I'm sorry to use the general term, but that's what they're calling themselves. Do they really think that they will be seamlessly integrated into American society? There's a language barrier, first of all. Some of them don't even speak proper English, and they also refuse to. I can just imagine Frikkie and Susan at their fucking Walmart jobs because, yeah, that's if they're lucky. That's if they're fucking lucky. Trying to explain to Americans why they are white from Africa. Because according to Americans, Africa is a country. And there was a oom there with a moose beard and a poop the size of fucking Mount Rushmore. Imagine that uncle trying to explain to people why he's not starving, why there was no flies on his face on the TV, on American TV. Imagine that uncle trying to explain himself. I think the American people, or some of them actually, there will be a moose revolt or protest or whatever you want to call it if those people get put up in special houses, given special jobs, given amenities that regular refugees don't have. All the while, the people living next door who are Mexican with proper documentation get fucking deported. You know what I mean? It's not only the language barrier, bruh. It's also schools. Imagine those ladies go to school in the yellow veldworkers khakis. Yo. Again, Frikkie and Susan must cough up to buy Jordans and Stanley Cups and fucking iPads and MacBooks because, yeah, the kids are gonna suffer. Imagine Klein Frik pulling up there to fucking, I don't know, Washington DC High or whatever the thing is, in a young kort broek and a hemp. My bro. and velskoene. I was losing light over there. I'm very interested to see how this thing is going to turn out. Because to be a refugee, you can't so much just come back. Because why would you come back from a country you're fleeing from? Because your life is in danger. Why would you go back? You know what I mean? And if you come back, because our constitution does not allow our citizenship to be renounced or whatever the word is, they can't take your citizenship away from you as a South African, basically. You can never become a refugee again. So what if war does break out? I hope it doesn't, but what if war does break out? You're gonna have to fucking stand up a post, frick. My main concern is the biltong. Because we all know, the most racist motherfuckers in this country of South Africa, those brassa, those men, sir, they make the best biltong, bruh. The more racist the place is, the better the biltong. That's actually my only reason why I want to go to Orania. To taste the fucking biltong. Yo, it's gonna be fun times ahead.
USA, USA, USA. Hey, dude. What's up? I'm moving to the USA, bro. Okay, why? Because I just got refugee status, son. Okay, don't talk like that, okay? And why did you get refugee status? Because I'm white, bro. Isn't refugee status for people from war-torn countries or like people that just got nowhere else to go? Not me white, like Trump. There's literally thousands of people living in shacks today because of our history and also because of the current government's terrible efforts to take care of the most vulnerable. Do you think they can get refugee status? Are they white? No. Well, too bad. What Daddy Trump says goes. Isn't that racist? I don't know, dude. Ask Elon. Everyone knows he's the real president, huh? Did you check the Time magazine cover? Elon that worked in America as an illegal immigrant. Yeah, the guy that still greets you like this. No, don't do that. So you're moving for real? Yeah, dude, I'm just over this shit place, eh? But I'll see you in December in Plate, at the beach house. Also got tickets for all the Springbok games. And also it's Africa Burn. Those things are expensive, so you better be there with me. So wait, you're coming back? Well, duh, I have to come back, dude. I got my Hilux bucky here that I need to service. I'm also repainting the house in Arties. Got a golf tournament in Pinnacle Point. You think Cape Town 10 is going to be fun without me? So wait, let me just get this straight. You don't have to be a victim of any kind to get this refugee status from Trump. No, dude, aren't you listening to me? You just have to be white.
So South Africa's own government is even coming out today and telling Trump, if you want to take on these refugees, that's on you. But just so you know, none of them have been properly vetted. A lot of them have been involved in protests that are pro-apartheid, And on top of that, these guys are actually claiming that they're being persecuted for being white. I don't know if you know a whole lot about South Africa, where Elon Musk is from, but the apartheid just ended not very long ago. If you don't know what that is, it was mass segregation. South Africa's government also came out and added that it's really hard to be a refugee of persecution when you're amongst the most highest earners and highly educated in the entire region. But in my personal opinion, this kind of gives me remnants of Operation Paperclip, what the US government did after World War II. They got a little over 1,500 German scientists and high-ranking officials from the military, Hitler's military, to come over to the United States so they could learn from them. Now, I'm no mathematician, but 2 + 2 = 4. What Trump's been doing here in the United States as far as deporting individuals, they've all been brown people. And now he's more than willing to bring thousands of white people claiming they've been persecuted by brown people without even fully vetting them. The answer to this simple mathematical equation is Trump wants more white people in the United States. If it ain't white, it ain't right. And that's literally Trump's mindset. You can't prove me otherwise.
Has anyone gotten on like the farmers TikTok where they're talking about the South African farmers being brought over? So I turned 43 in a couple weeks, and in my lifetime, I remember the fall of apartheid. I remember when it ended, and I remember there was the Truth and Reconciliation, I think it was committee or conference. Anyway, they televised it, and that's where people came and they testified to atrocities, and there were people who were also held accountable and had to apologize, right? If I remember correctly, there was also like court hearings as well. But these farmers that are talking about the refugee white African farmers coming to the United States aren't looking at it from the bigger picture. Like, number one, I don't think they're aware of what apartheid is. I don't think they're aware of like how brutal it was and how a lot of these particular white people want that brutality back. They want a segregation of races. That's why they're asking to come here. So I first saw this with Skylar, the farmer in Missouri who was worried about losing his farm due to a cancellation of the contracts that were made under the Biden administration and how they're not being honored under the Trump administration. So he was really worried about that situation for himself, as one would be, right? So I have nothing but sympathy in that situation. But now that things seem to be a little more resolved, he's still not looking at the bigger picture because he's talking about the South African farmers coming here and how awesome it is. He doesn't look old enough to me. I don't know how old he is, but he doesn't look old enough to remember the fall of apartheid. And honestly, I don't think most Americans do. My dad had a lot of connections to the international news desk at CNN way back then, and his best friend was a producer. So I think that's why it was something that we saw a lot of in our house. But yeah, these farmers are excited that there's going to be white refugees coming in here to like take sanctuary and help out on farms. I don't think they know that these farmers, for the most part, aren't actually farmers, and that they used slave labor. Like, they mistreated people. It's kind of like Elon Musk's family. People don't seem to understand that emerald mine was exploited labor. You know, stolen resources, and it was exploited labor. And that's exactly what these farmers, and they're not all farmers, by the way. A lot of them are just inner city people, Afrikaaners. And there's a difference there too. Anyway, the gist of it is, they think, it seems, that they're going to have help on their farms by bringing these people over. So I think I don't want to say it for sure, but it feels like they're thinking they're going to get an exchange from undocumented labor from people of color to white legal labor that might be subsidized by the government, because under refugee status, there are some benefits that get extended. So I'm starting to wonder here. I'm starting to wonder if they know what the deal is. and how detrimental this is to everybody. You know, I think that we could talk all day long to a lot of these people about the problem with race relations in South Africa, and they may not actually understand it. But I do think that if we spoke to them about possibly this labor situation and their farms, it's a system to take their farms, not to give it to South Africans, but to give it to corporations. So bringing in this labor is not actually going to save them in the long run. It's just a new segue to corporate purchase of their private farms. I have several clients from South Africa who have moved here for various reasons. Even my chiropractor is from South Africa, from Johannesburg. People don't know here that Dutch people, for the most part, it was the Dutch, who came into South Africa and brutally took over. Like, they wiped out the people who actually lived there and forced them into subservience. They stole the land. And then they made the people who were African work on these farms. They made the Africans build the cities. And then they pushed all of the people who built the cities into ghettos like Soweto. There's also the science experiments, the medical experiments that took place. They were very Tuskegee style, okay? It's very, very sad. They did it with AIDS. For example, they did experiments on pregnant women, causing pregnancy losses that were pretty devastating. And I mean, a lot of other things. They even experimented on children. The brutality of the police to this day is still very infamous. I've heard the spin from both sides, from my clients, from both sides. I tend to believe that there is no need to be a refugee from South Africa as a white person, because they still have the upper hand. And although locals are fighting back because they've been losing more and more rights recently. There's even whole cities that don't allow Africans in there. Like, you know, black Africans, they allow white Africans only. And we can't have that here. And that is what's coming. You know, we think Elon Musk is bad, and they all say, oh, that was a Roman salute. He grew up in apartheid. He supports apartheid. He thrived in apartheid. It stands to reason that Elon Musk would want apartheid here, as does the GOP. If you've made it this far, support some South African artists, if you will. Obviously, Trevor Noah is our beloved South African here in the United States. But if you like hip hop music or really good rap, there's an excellent rapper from South Africa named Youngsta CPT. I love his music. I listen to it regularly. Do not support Die Antwoord. They're bad. They're Afrikaners. We don't like them.
Welcome. Welcome to the United States of America. It is such an honor for us to receive you here today. This is the land of the free. It makes me so happy to see you with our flag in your hands, and that flag symbolizes liberty for so many of us. Many of us, our families have had a journey not that different from the journey that you are embarking on today. Any adjustment in life, any change takes a while to get used to. But I want you all to know that you are really welcome here, and that we respect what you have had to deal with these last few years. We respect the long tradition of your people and what you have accomplished over the years. And I am sure that you will be successful. It's, as you know, a lot of you, I think, are farmers, right? When you have quality seeds, you can put them in foreign soil and they will blossom, they will bloom. And we are excited to welcome you here to our country, where we think you will bloom, and we will hopefully allow you to have fulfilling lives for your children, and then we will bloom and we will benefit alongside you.
But I did state in the video that you may find someone amongst the refugees that had experienced crime. And I thought that might have been the requirements for refugee status. But if we are going to have this argument, are you saying that America is opening its doors for any white person that experiences crime in their country? Or what are we saying? Or is it for anyone that experiences violent crime in their country? I also want to highlight that I've been documenting crime in South Africa when it comes to white people. And the reason I've been doing that is because of the false narrative that is continuously pushed that crime is racially driven. And you might be surprised how many white people die at the hands of white people in South Africa. But I wanted to highlight that the experience of crime is not even a requirement to qualify for your first interview as a white Afrikaner refugee. Here is the form. So I just want to say this kind of thing is highly subjective, and I want to understand, how is someone at the US Embassy going to argue, listen, no, that's not true, it wasn't persecution. So you've got past persecution based on race, okay? So I applied for a job, I wasn't the most qualified, I didn't get it, but because we've got the false information going around about race laws and excluding us, even though the stats say something totally different, I can say, I didn't get a job because of my race. All right. Past persecution based on religion, nationality, political opinion. Okay. So we have just had a huge account that was boosted by Elon Musk that was pushing a lot of disinformation about South Africa. And the person behind that account on X got exposed in the media. And he could say that it was past persecution based on political opinion, even though he also spread hate speech and also there was racism. And it was actually in the country's interest that this person got exposed. All right. But how is someone going to say that's not my lived truth? Past persecution based on membership in a particular social group. So if you belong to a certain social group that is pushing a harmful message and people are against it or take legal action, that's persecution. Fear of future harm based on race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a particular social group should you remain in or return to South Africa. I mean, I don't understand. This is highly subjective. Okay. So, I personally think that, as I said, some people may have experienced crime in South Africa, but because you're white, it doesn't exempt you from crime. It's terrible if it happens to anyone. But here's your form.
White South Africans are now given refugee status in the US, and as somebody who comes from a country that has been hosting white South Africans for the past decade now as they're seeking refuge, I just want to tell you, and you can ask Australians and Kiwis about this too, because white South Africans have been moving in massive numbers to Australia and New Zealand, so they know what I'm talking about. When white South Africans move to white majority countries, which the US is, they start thinking that because it's a white majority country, that it's a safe space to say inflammatory things about black South Africans. So just an FYI, get ready for that.
So I've been fuming all day about this article that I read this morning about the Afrikaans farmer refugee program that the US government is hatching, and just thinking about how infuriated I am that as a US citizen who still has to pay taxes to the United States, even though I live in South Africa, that my taxpayer dollars will be going to set up refugee centers in Pretoria for Afrikaans farmers seeking to move to the United States. This makes me really mad, but now I'm sitting here with my cat. Let me see if I can show you. Say hi, Trixie. Sitting with my cat always relaxes me. So I'm gonna not post the rant that I recorded earlier today about this, but I just wanna say quickly, I'm a travel writer and a blogger. I have been traveling around South Africa for 15 years. I've traveled in every province extensively, stayed in rural areas, urban areas, you name it. I have stayed on a lot of farms in South Africa because that's often where the accommodation is. And those farms are always owned by white people. And, you know, all travel accommodation in South Africa virtually is owned by white people. And those people are living it up here. Like, white people, we've got a good life here in South Africa. It's absurd. Yeah, it's just absurd. And I guess that's all I want to say. Thank you. Actually, there's one other thing I want to say in this video. I'm so curious about this, and I haven't seen a lot of discussion of it in other videos, but how is the US government gonna figure out or decide who is Afrikaans and who isn't? And why is this refugee program only for Afrikaners? I have this theory that whoever is making these laws actually maybe doesn't understand the difference, or they don't know that like all white people in South Africa are not necessarily Afrikaans, and they're just using the word Afrikaans as a euphemism because they don't just want to say white, but in fact they'll just take any white farmer. Are they going to test people through language? Are they going to do genetic testing? Are they going to decide whether or not you're Afrikaans according to your name? What about non-white people that speak Afrikaans, of which there are millions? I don't know. It's just very confusing to me. I want answers, and again, absurd.
Afrikaners have just boarded a private US chartered jet out of OR Tambo, the first group to be granted refugee status under the Fast Track program by the US administration. Now, in case you missed it, it's called Mission South Africa, and it was created to resettle Afrikaners who say they're being persecuted under the Land Expropriation Act and discriminatory race-based policies. So in just 3 months, over 8,000 people applied for refugee status, mostly Afrikaner farmers. Of those, only 100 were selected for now. Now you see, this group of 49 that left last night included entire families who were quietly escorted through OR Tambo under police supervision. Now you see, they expected to land in Washington later today, where the US has provided them with housing, phones, food, clothing, the full relocation package. Now supporters say that this is a long overdue recognition of racial discrimination in South Africa. But critics, including the South African government, are calling this a politically motivated move that misrepresents the country's laws and institutions. As for you though, what's your take? Is this a justified intervention or a political stunt dressed up as humanitarian relief?
Why do we have to take these people? Why are they our problem? They're Dutch. They should get sent back to the Netherlands where they belong. I don't want to have to learn how to speak Dutch just so I can order a taco. Look at what they did in South Africa. You know, these are bad hombres. The only job they know how to do is owning the farms that their great-grandparents stole.
49 white South Africans arrived just outside of Washington today on a U.S. chartered flight, granted citizenship status by the Trump administration. A surprise move because President Trump himself signed an executive order on day one of his presidency, suspending the refugee admissions program, quote, until such a time as the further entry into the United States of refugees aligns with the interests of the United States. So what makes these Afrikaners different from other refugees from war-torn countries like Sudan, the Democratic Republic of Congo, or Afghanistan, who have been waiting for years to get into the country?
Well, it's a big question, and it's a key question here. We know that the Trump administration suspended the refugee settlement program, saying that essentially we didn't have space for this. I want to read to you part of what their reasoning was at the time. They said the United States lacks the ability to absorb large numbers of migrants, and in particular refugees, into its communities. They went on to say that this really ensures the appropriate assimilation of refugees. But I've been talking to folks, and they say really this is about race, they think, especially some South Africans who fled after the apartheid and the racist regime there. I talked to some people who told me that they feel like this is the president essentially taking the side of people who are white over black refugees, including in places like Sudan and the Congo.